The lobby of Ellery Maritime hummed with Monday morning traffic. Margot Ellery crossed the marble floor flanked by two board members, her heels sharp on stone, her mood sharper after the call she had just taken. The contractor stood near the security desk, gray polo, clipboard, quiet eyes. She stopped 3 feet from him, tilted her head to one side, and smiled the kind of smile that cuts. "So when was your last date?" The board members smirked. "Ready." He looked up, met her eyes. "1 second. 2, right now. With you." The lobby went still. Nobody moved. Margot did not answer. She walked past him toward the elevator bank, the two board members trailing a half step behind. The doors closed. The ride up to the 18th floor was silent. She did not look at the brass panel above the door. She looked at her own reflection in it, and did not recognize the woman she saw. Her assistant rose as she came through the glass doors. Margot waved her down without breaking stride, entered her office, closed the door, and stood for a moment with her hand still on the handle. She picked up the phone. "Diane, I need the personnel file on a contractor in the lobby. White male, around 40, gray polo, clipboard. Probably building operations. I want it on my desk in 15 minutes. 20 minutes later, the head of human resources knocked. "Miss Ellery, there is no Hudson Vale on our employee rolls." Margot looked up. "Then who is he?" Diane set a single sheet on her desk. "He is registered as a Tier 1 external contractor. Access code authorized by Joanna Reeve 3 weeks ago. The work order reads operational audit. Whitwater integration pre-clearance." Margot read it twice. Whitwater. The acquisition she had been chasing for 6 months. The deal she could not close. The name she heard every morning in her own head before she heard her own name. "Thank you, Diane." The door clicked shut. Margot sat very still for a long minute. Then she stood, crossed the floor, opened her own door, and walked the corridor to legal. Joanna Reeve was at her desk, glasses on, reading a red line. She did not look up. "You have something to ask me. I have a contractor in my lobby who knows things he should not know." Joanna set the red line down. She removed her glasses and folded the arms in carefully. "He has clearance to be there, Margot. I signed for it. I cannot say more than that right now." "Why not?" "Because I cannot. I want you to hear me. I cannot, not I will not. There is a difference." Margot held her eyes. Joanna held hers back. "When can you?" "Soon." That was the whole answer. Margot walked back to her office. She worked until 7. At 7, she rode the elevator back down to the ground floor. The lobby was nearly empty. The day guard nodded as she passed. Hudson was not at the security desk. She walked the service corridor behind the elevator bank, past the freight door, and found him in the mechanical room, sleeves rolled, panel open, a small flashlight clipped to his collar. He was reading the air controller and noting numbers on his clipboard. He heard her step. He did not turn. "Who are you?" "Really, I am doing exactly what my clearance allows me to do. You can call security." "I am not going to call security." "I know." She stood there for 30 seconds. He kept noting numbers. The fluorescent buzzed above them. She left. Outside the room, she realized she was gripping her own clipboard with both hands. She did not remember picking it up. 2 floors below, in the underground garage, Roland Pace leaned against a charcoal sedan with his phone to his ear. 4 more weeks. If the Whitwater deal does not close, I will have the votes. She will be gone. He hung up. He smiled at no one. Tuesday morning. Margot was at her desk before sunrise. She had not slept well. She opened the building security portal, a system she rarely touched, because she had her own access cards and her own keys and her own assumptions about who went where in her own building. She typed in the contractor code Diane had given her. She set the date range to the past 3 weeks. The log filled the screen. Hudson Vale had entered the server room on the 19th floor 7 separate times. The server room was restricted to information technology leadership and her own office. Even the chief financial officer did not have a clean badge for it. Each entry was countersigned by Joanna Reeve. Hudson Vale had entered the boardroom on the 19th floor 4 times. 3 of those entries were after midnight. One was at 2:14 in the morning. Hudson Vale had entered the legal contracts archive on the 17th floor 6 times. He had spent an average of 40 minutes inside each visit. The badge logs showed him opening subcabinets Whitwater, Coastline, Port Authority filings, executive compensation. Margot read each row twice. Her coffee went cold. She picked up her phone, called Joanna, and asked her to come in. Joanna arrived within 5 minutes. Margot closed the door. "Joanna, he has higher access in my building than I do. Explain that to me." Joanna sat. She was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was very low. "There are some people whose companies you do not buy, Margot. They agree to be bought. And they only agree after they have looked at you long enough to know who they would be selling to." Margot's throat tightened. She did not say anything for almost a full minute. Then she went to her desk, opened a private browser tab, and typed the name Hudson Vale into the Public Securities and Exchange Commission database. No results. She typed it into the Navy Personnel Index. Service record sealed. Office of Naval Intelligence. She sat back in her chair. The man she had tried to humiliate in her own lobby, in front of 2 board members, was not a contractor. He was not a building engineer. He was not an employee. He was the company she was trying to buy. She closed the laptop. She walked to the window. Charleston Harbor sat flat and gray in the early light. A container ship was moving out toward the open water, the same kind of ship the Whitwater deal would have given her clean cybersecurity rights to monitor. She picked up her desk phone. She set it down. She picked it up again. She set it down again. She did not know what number she meant to dial. Building security. Joanna, her own father, who had been dead 9 years, and would have known what to do. She took the elevator down to the ground floor. The security desk was empty. The mechanical room door was closed but unlocked. She pushed it open. The air controller panel was sealed shut, the tools put away. The room was clean. On the small workbench, where the flashlight had been, there was a single folded slip of paper. She picked it up. Inside, written by hand on a plain card, H. Vale, Whitwater Systems. When you are ready to speak as equals, call. Below it, a phone number. She did not call. She folded the card. She put it in her pocket. She walked back to the elevator and did not look at the security desk on the way out. Friday afternoon. The bell at the elementary school rang at 3:15. Margot was already in the carpool line, 10 minutes early, her phone face down on the passenger seat. She had blocked out a 40-minute window on her calendar and labeled it personal. No one at Ellery Maritime knew she had a 6-year-old at home. Wynne was her sister Caroline's daughter. Caroline had died 2 years and 4 months ago. The arrangement had been handled quietly through family lawyers. Margot had not put a photo of Wynne on her desk. She had not put one anywhere in her office. She had been raised to keep work and grief in separate rooms. She parked, got out, and walked across the side lawn to the after-school pickup yard. That was when she saw him. Hudson was crouched down on the grass, one knee in the dirt, listening to a girl in a pale yellow sweater and round glasses. The girl was holding up a drawing a cargo ship coming into port, the bowline tight, the cranes lifting a container the size of a house. "This crane right here," Hudson was saying. "Did you draw it from looking or from thinking?" "From looking," the girl said. "Sunday, at your workshop." "What kind of looking?" She thought about it. "The kind where you wait." Hudson nodded as if she had just said something more important than most adults said in a week. Margot stood 10 meters away on the path. She did not step closer. She watched the man who had stood in her lobby, the man whose Navy file was sealed, the man who could choose whether or not to sell her his company, laugh quietly at his daughter's joke about cranes. It was not the laugh of a contractor. It was the laugh of a person who had built a small good life out of what he had left. Wynne came running across the grass and grabbed Margot's hand. "Aunt Margot, you came?" Poppy looked up at the sound, saw Wynne, and waved. The 2 girls were in the same first-grade class. Margot had not known. Hudson followed Poppy's wave with his eyes. He saw Margot. There was a moment then that lasted maybe a second and a half. He did not look surprised. He did not nod. He did not pretend he did not recognize her. He simply stood up, brushed grass off his knee, took Poppy's hand, and said, "Come on, kiddo." They walked toward the gate. He did not look back. Margot held Wynne's hand a little tighter than she meant to. In the car, halfway home down East, and said, "Aunt Margot, why are you holding your breath?" Margot did not answer. She let the breath out slowly through her nose. That night, after Wynne was bathed and storied and asleep, Margot sat at her kitchen table in the house on Trad Street and laid the small white card in front of her. The card with the phone number. She did not call. She turned it face down on the wood. She left it. She came back 5 minutes later from the sink and turned it face up. She read the number again. She turned it face down. She turned it face up. She did this 3 times. Then she went to bed and lay in the dark and did not call. Monday morning. Emergency board meeting at 8:30. Roland Pace had requested it on Sunday night by email, subject line Whitwater. Time sensitive. The 7 board members assembled in the 19th floor conference room with coffee they did not drink. Roland did not waste preamble. I am asking the board to formally calendar a review of executive performance in 21 days. If the Whitwater acquisition has not closed by then, that review will become a vote of confidence on the chief executive. The room was quiet. Margot did not blink. She had 3 solid votes. 2 were leaning to Roland. The remaining 2 were old, careful, and had not yet decided. She needed 4 to survive a vote. She had 3. The motion passed to the calendar. The meeting adjourned. Roland caught her in the hallway outside. He did not raise his voice. He never did. Margot, listen to me. Whitwater is a small company. If you cannot get them down on price, let me try. I have channels. What channels, Roland? He smiled. The same smile he had used at her father's funeral. Channels. She thanked him for his concern and walked back to her office. 20 minutes later, Joanna closed her door behind her. Roland has met privately with the Whitwater Chief Financial Officer's representative twice this month. Neither meeting was on company calendar. Neither was logged through legal. Margot leaned back in her chair. The picture was getting clearer, and clearer was worse. Roland did not want the deal to close on her terms. He wanted her out, and he wanted to close it himself, on different terms, for someone else. She thought about Hudson in the mechanical room, about the access logs, about the card in her pocket. She understood now what he had been waiting for. He was not waiting for her to win Whitwater. He was waiting to see who would be sitting in the chief executive's office when the deal finally closed. She took the elevator down to the ground floor that afternoon at 4. She walked the east corridor and found Hudson at the emergency stairwell door, testing the magnetic sensor with a small handheld unit. He was logging readings. She placed the white card on the bar of the door beside his hand, face up. She did not turn it. She did not flip it. I did not call. I came directly. He did not look up right away. I know. You know Roland is meeting with your people. I know, and you are not stopping it. I am watching. Watching for what? He set the meter down. He turned. He looked at her the way he had in the lobby. The same level, steady look, no apology in it. I am watching to see whether you are the person I thought you were in the lobby that day. She did not answer. She turned, walked back down the corridor, rode the elevator up to the 18th floor, and shut her office door. For the first time in many months, she did not think about the board. She did not think about Roland. She did not think about the Whitwater valuation model on her second monitor. She thought about a girl in a pale yellow sweater, crouched on the grass with a drawing of a cargo ship, telling her father about the kind of looking where you wait. She did not know what to do with that thought, so she sat with it. Saturday morning. Margot drove east across the Ravenel Bridge with the windows up and the radio off. The card sat on the passenger seat, with an address written in the same small handwriting on the back, a slip of warehouse at the end of a small marina off Shem Creek. She parked in gravel. 2 small fishing boats sat on trailers outside the building, primer gray, half sanded. A salt wind came off the water. The warehouse door was open 6 inches. She pushed it open. Hudson was inside in a flannel shirt and jeans, his hands stained dark with engine grease, leaning over the open hood of an outboard. Poppy sat at a low wooden table in the corner, drawing in a small sketchbook. She did not look up when the door moved. Hudson looked up. He took her in. He did not seem surprised. You found it. I came to ask you one question. He nodded once. He gestured at a wooden chair by the workbench. She sat. Poppy walked over without speaking, placed a small ceramic cup of warm water in front of her, walked back to her sketchbook, and resumed drawing. Margot wrapped her hands around the cup. Why did you say that? In the lobby, he set down the rag he had been wiping a wrench with. He thought about the question before he answered. The shop smelled of marine oil and clean wood. Because I have been watching you for 4 weeks. I saw you work 14 hours a day. I saw you treat the night cleaning crew better than your own board of directors. And I saw you alone in a way I recognized. Because I have been alone for 3 years. He paused. I did not plan to say it. You asked first. I answered honestly. Margot was quiet for a long time. She looked at Poppy. The girl had her tongue between her teeth, the way children do when a line on the page matters. Your wife. He nodded once. Mara. Car accident on I-26. Poppy was 5. Margot did not say she was sorry. He had heard those words enough times to know which ones meant anything and which ones were habit. She just nodded. He nodded back. She stood up after a while. She set the cup down carefully so it did not clink. She walked toward the door. Poppy looked up for the first time. "You are Wynn's aunt. She said you make pancakes shaped like boats." Margot smiled. The smile reached her eyes, which surprised her. "That is true." Poppy considered this. She nodded once, satisfied, and went back to her drawing. Margot drove back across the bridge with the windows down. The wind smelled like salt and creosote and pluff mud. She did not turn on the radio. That night in his apartment on the King Street side of downtown, Roland Pace sent an email to all 7 members of the board. The subject line read Calendar Accelerated Special Meeting Wednesday. The body proposed advancing the executive review vote from 21 days out to 4. The reason given was new material developments warranting expedited consideration. Margot read the email on her phone in bed at 11:40. She did not respond. She did not sleep. Monday morning, just before 9. Joanna knocked on Margot's door once and let herself in. She closed it behind her. She had a plain manila envelope in her hand. She set it on the desk and sat down across from Margot without being invited. The two-way non-disclosure agreement between Whitwater and Ellery expired at midnight. "I can speak now." Margot looked at the envelope. She did not touch it. "Speak." Joanna opened it herself. She removed 3 documents and laid them out side by side on the desk like a hand of cards. The first was a personal consulting contract, Roland Pace, named individually, with a Delaware shell company called Coastline Holdings, Limited Liability. The contract paid Roland a strategic advisory fee of $12 million, payable after the closing of an unnamed maritime cybersecurity acquisition. The second was a memo. Coastline Holdings had approached the Whitwater Chief Financial Officer's representative twice in the past 4 weeks. Their offer was 38% below Ellery Maritime's standing bid. Their term sheet included a clause to resell Whitwater to Ellery 6 months after closing at the original Ellery bid price, minus the $12 million Coastline would have collected as their consulting fee. The third was an internal access log from the Ellery server room on the 19th floor. The badge identification belonged to a junior information technology analyst named Marvin Chen, who had been fired the previous month for falsifying overtime sheets. The log showed Marvin Chen's credentials accessing the internal Whitwater valuation model at 1:47 in the morning, 3 days after he had been escorted out of the building. Margot read the third document twice. Roland used a dead badge to read our valuation model. Then he used what he read to tell Coastline exactly how low they could bid. Yes, and Hudson Vale found this in his second week. In the server room. He has had this for almost a month. Margot's jaw moved once. He could have gone to the board himself. He could have killed Roland's career on a Tuesday. He chose not to. Why? Joanna folded her hands on the desk. He wanted to know if you would find it yourself. Or, failing that, if you would deserve to be told. Margot sat with that for a long moment. Then she stood. She left her office without putting her jacket on. She rode the elevator down to the ground floor. The lobby was busy with the late morning shift change. Hudson was at the security desk, signing a clipboard for a delivery small components in a padded box. Margot walked up to the desk and laid the photocopy of the Coastline contract on the counter between them. "I know." Hudson looked down at the page. He looked up at her. His face did not change. "What will you do?" "I will take it to the board on Wednesday. Before Roland can call his vote." He nodded slowly. "You will need more than a contract. I have the server room logs. Roland used credentials from a former employee. That is not a policy breach. That is a federal computer fraud charge. Will you give them to me? They are already in your legal counsel's office. She has had them since 7 o'clock this morning." Margot did not ask why he had given the logs to Joanna first instead of to her. She understood why. "Why did you give them to me at all?" He thought about it. He answered quietly, "Because you drove out to my workshop, and you did not ask about the share price." She turned to leave. At the revolving door she stopped. She did not turn around. "Thank you." He did not answer. She did not need him to. Wednesday morning. 9:14. The boardroom on the 19th floor filled in the slow way it always filled coffee, small talk, the rustle of paper agendas no one read. 7 directors took their seats. Roland Pace, sat at the far end of the long walnut table with his hands folded over his portfolio. Margot did not sit. She walked to the head of the room, plugged her laptop into the projector cable, and waited for the screen to wake up. She did not open with a defense. She opened with data. The first slide was an organizational chart of Coastline Holdings registered in Delaware. 2 layers of shell entities, the controlling interest traced through a Cayman partnership back to a single beneficial owner. An arrow ran from that name to a small inset photo at the top of the chart. The photo was Roland Pace. The room stilled. The second slide was the consulting contract. $12 million. Payable on closing. The third slide was the server room access log. Marvin Chen's badge. 1:47 in the morning, 3 days after Chen's termination. The pulled record of the Whitwater valuation modeled the exact internal numbers Coastline had used to set its lowball bid. Roland stood up so fast his chair rolled back into the credenza behind him. Where did you get this information? This is a confidential breach of security protocols. This is from a party with lawful credentialed access, approved by our general counsel, Margot said. Reported to me in my capacity as the company's chief executive and to legal as a matter of fiduciary disclosure. The 2 directors who had been leaning toward Roland looked at the table. One of them, a former federal prosecutor named Tom Hadley, asked for a brief recess. Joanna formally moved to initiate an internal investigation under Section 4 of the corporate bylaws. The motion carried 6-1. Roland was the one. Roland was suspended from his chief operating officer duties pending investigation, effective immediately. He gathered his laptop, his portfolio, and his coffee cup. He did not look at anyone on his way out the door. The meeting did not formally adjourn. It dissolved. Eleanor Whitcomb did not stand up to leave. She was the oldest director on the board, the only woman besides Margot, and she had served on the Whitwater Advisory Council 20 years ago when it was still a Navy spin-off. She waited until the room emptied. Margot, sit down for a moment. Margot sought. You had help. I have done this work for 40 years. The man who built that case is not your employee. No, he is Whitwater. Eleanor nodded slowly, the way old people nod when something has finally clicked into the shape they always knew it had. Then the acquisition just changed hands. It is no longer ours to decide. It is his. That afternoon, Margot did not go down to the lobby. She did not look for Hudson. She let the day pass. She returned phone calls. She drafted a memo to staff. She waited. At 6 in the evening, there was a knock at her office door. Hudson came in. For the first time, he was not wearing the gray polo. He was wearing a dark blue button-down shirt and no badge. He set a folder on her desk, offer to sell Whitwater Systems to Ellery Maritime. At your original bid price. No adjustment. She opened the folder. The numbers were exactly what she had offered 6 months ago. Why the original price? You could ask for more, because you took it to the board alone. You did not need me to raise the price to prove anything. She read the cover page. She read the term sheet. She picked up her pen. She signed on the line. Her hand was steady. When she pushed the folder back across the desk, her fingers brushed his for half a second. Neither of them pulled away. Saturday morning. Margot had asked them to come at 9. She had not given a reason. She had not said brunch. She had said if they were free, she would be at the house. The house on Trad Street was small for the neighborhood, 3 stories, narrow lot, an iron gate, a courtyard garden in back with a magnolia she had been told was older than the Civil War. She had not invited anyone but family there since Caroline died. Wynne was up at 7, already dressed, the table set with the good plates because she had insisted on the good plates. Hudson and Poppy arrived at 9:05. Hudson handed her a small jar of local honey without explanation. Poppy stood in the doorway holding a sketchbook against her chest and watching Wynne the way she had watched Margot in the workshop. Wynne pulled Poppy by the wrist into the kitchen. Within 30 seconds, the 2 girls were at the breakfast table with a single large sheet of butcher paper and a fistful of markers between them, drawing cargo ships, cranes, seagulls, a small mermaid in the corner that was clearly Wynne's contribution. Margot worked at the stove. She made pancakes. She made 2 for Poppy in the shape of small boats. They were lopsided. The starboard side of the second one had a dent in it where she had flipped it too soon. Poppy inspected them on her plate. She nodded once. Pretty. Hudson leaned against the counter with a mug of coffee. He did not say much. He watched. When the girls finished and ran out the back door into the garden, with a bag of birdseed for the courtyard finches, he spoke. "Do you know why I said yes when you asked us to come? For Poppy." He shook his head. "Because you made pancakes for my daughter before you made them for your niece." Margot stopped with the spatula in her hand. She had not noticed that she had done that. She had only done it. "In 3 years," he said, "I have not let anyone into Poppy's kitchen. Today I let her into yours." He paused. "That is how I say it." Margot put the spatula down on the counter beside the stove. She turned to him. They were standing 2 steps apart in the small kitchen, the light from the back window falling on the counter between them. She spoke very quietly. "In the lobby that day, I asked you that question to put you down. I am sorry. I know. And I answered the way I did because I had not told myself the truth in 36 months. You do not need to apologize for the question. You can apologize for the tone." She nodded. "I am sorry for the tone." He nodded back. The back door banged open. Wynne came in first, breathless, holding up a small whelk shell she had found in the soil under the magnolia. Poppy was right behind her, beaming. The moment in the kitchen passed. It did not go away. When Hudson and Poppy left, Poppy turned at the gate and ran back up the path. She hugged Margot quickly around the waist, said nothing, and ran back to the car. Hudson stood at the open driver's door. He looked across the courtyard at her. "Come out to the workshop next Saturday?" "Yes." He did not ask what time. She did not ask what to bring. 2 weeks. Roland Pace was indicted on Tuesday morning on 3 federal charges: wire fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and unauthorized access to a protected computer system. The Charleston Post and Courier ran a 4-paragraph item on page 4 of the business section. The Wall Street Journal picked it up the same afternoon and ran it longer. Ellery Maritime announced the closing of the Whitwater Systems acquisition the following Monday. The stock ticked up 41 cents on the news. The board, in a brief executive session, voted unanimously to extend the chief executive's contract for an additional 5 years and to elevate Eleanor Whitcomb to the chairmanship. Margot did not throw a party. She did not send a company-wide email about the win. She wrote 3 short thank you notes by hand, 1 to Joanna Reeve, 1 to Eleanor Whitcomb, 1 to the night cleaning crew on the 18th floor. She left them in interoffice envelopes and went home at 5 o'clock for the first time in months. On Friday evening, she drove out to Shem Creek. Hudson was closing the workshop for the night when she pulled into the gravel. Poppy was not there. Her grandmother, Mara's mother, who lived 10 minutes away and had been the one constant in Hudson's life for the last 3 years, had her for the weekend. Hudson locked the door. They walked together along the boardwalk that ran behind the seafood restaurants. The string lights above the docks were on. The water under them was black and gold. They did not hold hands. They walked at the same pace without trying to. They talked about Poppy. They talked about Wynne. They talked about whether the 2 girls should be in the same second-grade classroom next year, or whether it was better for them to be in different rooms and meet in the cafeteria. They did not talk about the acquisition. They did not talk about the lobby. Hudson stopped at the end of the last dock. He looked out at the lights of the boats. The wind moved the rigging. "Do you regret asking the question?" Margot thought about it for a long moment. "No. If I had not asked, you would not have answered. If you had not answered, I would not have gone looking for who you were." He nodded. "When Mara died, I thought I would never answer that question seriously again. I said what I said that day as a joke, just to get you to stop asking." He paused, but by the time the words were out of my mouth, I realized it was not a joke. Margot did not say anything. She stood next to him at the end of the dock. Her shoulder was very close to his shoulder. It did not touch. When she drove back across the Ravenel Bridge to the city, the lights of the cables strung against the sky, she understood something she could not have put into words but could see clearly. She no longer needed to win the board to feel like she was enough. She had spent her whole life winning the board to feel like she was enough. That had been the price of the chair. She rolled the window down. The salt wind came in. She drove the rest of the way home with the window open. 6 weeks later, Monday morning. 7:40 in the lobby of Ellery Maritime. The marble floor caught the early sun from the long windows on the east side. The day guard was at the security desk reading a paperback. No one else had arrived. Margot came through the revolving door with her coat folded over her arm and 2 paper coffee cups in her hand. She crossed the marble floor. Her heels were quieter than they had been the morning all of this began. Hudson was standing in the same spot he had stood that first day near the security desk. He was no longer in the gray polo. He was in a dark blue shirt, jacket open, and on his lapel was a small enamel pin and a fresh photo badge that read H. Vale, Senior Advisor. Whitwater Integration. Margot stopped 3 feet from him. The same distance. She set one of the coffee cups down on the counter and slid it toward him across the polished wood. She looked at him. 1 second. She spoke quietly. There was nothing sharp in the question this time. There was nothing to win. So when was your last date? Hudson did not look down at the cup. He turned to face her fully. Tonight. She nodded once. 7 o'clock. Husk Restaurant. I made the reservation already. His brow moved not in surprise, but in the recognition of someone who has just realized he has been understood before he had a chance to speak. When did you book the table for 2? Last Friday. How did you know I would say yes? I did not know. I booked it anyway. He picked up the coffee cup. They stood there for a few seconds in the empty lobby, in the slant of the morning light through the tall glass, neither of them stepping first. Outside on Meeting Street, a delivery truck idled and pulled away. The day guard turned a page in his paperback. He glanced up. He nodded at both of them without seeming to think anything of it. He went back to his book. Margot turned then and walked toward the executive elevator bank. Halfway across the marble floor, she stopped. She turned a quarter step. 7 o'clock. He nodded. 7 o'clock. She kept walking. She did not look back. The elevator doors opened on a soft chime. She stepped in. They closed. Hudson stood in the middle of the lobby for a few more seconds. The coffee cup was still warm in his hand. He did not smile, but he let out a long breath, the kind of breath a person lets out when he realizes he has been holding it for a long time without knowing it. For 3 years, he walked toward the security desk, set the cup down, signed in for the day, picked the cup up again, and rode the freight elevator up to the floor where the Whitwater integration team had its temporary office. Neither of them had been looking for this. Neither of them had been ready. And yet here, in a quiet lobby on a Monday morning, both of them were.